How's it going, guys? Hope all are doing, and welcome to a brand new video tutorial from Udemy. Today we're gonna go ahead and create something really cool from scratch, as a lot of people actually love doing things from scratch, especially when they dealing with pure CSS and vanilla JavaScript and the standards of web, so they can easily know how things actually work without any libraries or framework being actually included or something like this, like Bootstrap or anything like that. So you can go ahead and know everything how it works from scratch. If you're a beginner or something, you can easily follow up the tutorial and understand everything we're gonna do. For this sake of this tutorial, we're gonna use codesandbox.io, since it provides you with a sandbox that you can easily work with a preview tab and everything online without installing any dependencies. And the reason why I love using this kind of sandboxes like Code Sandbox and CodePen and stuff like this, because it provides you with a sandbox that you can easily run your JavaScript code and CSS and Sass, pretty much they're going to use in this particular video tutorial, HTML and all the different things. And also the really awesome about Code Sandbox, it actually provides you with a dependency injection from npm, so you can easily go ahead and include any dependency you want to work with and just work with it out of the box. So for you actually guys to follow up without any problems, you can just head into Codebox or codebox.io and easily create a new sandbox in here and start working with this. So let me just preview to you, give you a quick overview of what is going to create in this particular video. Sure. So this actually looking in here is the actual Sass, and here's the preview tab. So let me just take this tab a little bit. So we're going to create an expandable search bar, and this is how we're going to look eventually. So you've got this icon in here with some kind of like a container, and this is the container that plays a role of the actual input bar. So once we click on that, we're going to get this really awesome expandable effect and animation with the search appearing and this kind of really awesome hover. Also, we're going to get this text falling up from the sky, so it's the animation as well. It's kind of like the text animating or coming up from the sky is really awesome as well. So this text or this search bar can be easily used on your website. For example, if you want to like put a pop-up that allows the user actually to include this search box in here and allow the users to quickly search throughout your website or throughout your platform or anything like this. So yeah, it's very awesome. Clearly in here, you click that, you get this from the app. If you just blur this out, it goes back into its place with the text hiding up and so on and so forth. So it's pretty much what I'm gonna create, and you can type in here. I'm gonna create this using Sass, as I've told you, and a little bit of JavaScript, some just like JavaScript for blurring things up, and obviously some HTML for putting up the structure together. So yeah, follow up along, guys, and let's just get started. Now, after we've got the sandbox actually opened for us, and it's actually a vanilla sandbox in here. What I mean by vanilla is just like you run pure JavaScript, pure CSS, or pure with Sass, something like this, or less, and normal HTML without any adders or something. Of course, you can go ahead and add dependency in here from the cool codesandbox.io, but yeah, we don't really need any dependencies in here. So let's just jump in here. Let me just get rid of that document, the get elements by ID, because it's not really important anymore. We don't really need that. And we also need to go to the style. We hit rename. I'm gonna put this like as CSS to make sure, or to tell you that it's gonna be a Sass thing instead of CSS. Or a normal CSS, and we're gonna just jump right into the doc type, which is into our HTML web page in here, and try to add a couple of things. So inside of the application in here, I'm gonna add a couple of things. Make sure you're actually including the index.js in here, because we're gonna use this later on to add some effects and make the web page or actual expandable search bar a little bit much more live and can interact with the actual user. So I've got in here application. I'm gonna add another div. The really annoying thing about this is actually you can't have emits. If you don't know, emits is actually what allows you to create very easily like automatic tags completion for HTML. So you just type the name of the tag, you click tab, and you get the full tag name in there. So instead of typing it all, that sounds a little bit easier for you, but it doesn't have that in here. Hopefully they fix it or something. I don't know. I think it's kind of only a bug, because it was working for me once I used this, but I'm gonna name this search contents. It's gonna be the main search contents. I'm gonna add another div in here. Just gonna be, so it's gonna have a class. I'm gonna add this like search dash title, and it's gonna be like the main title for our search. I'm gonna just hit that. I'm gonna hit h3. Okay, totally forgot. Let's try to add h3, and I'm gonna add search I don't know, for your next awesome thing or whatever. Actually, I don't know, I can't quite figure out a good thing to say in here. You might probably figure out something a little bit better. I'm gonna set in here the field set, the HTML5 tag, which probably just gonna go ahead and hold a couple of elements for us together. So this is what it does basically. It's just the name of a field set. So firstly we need the inputs. It's gonna represent the inputs of our the actual search bar inputs where we can type strings and stuff like this. So I'm gonna put type text, of course, because we wanna make the text visible and readable for the user. I'm gonna assign an ID in here instead of a class because it's gonna have search inputs and get a very specific. So I'm gonna name this search bar, and obviously you're gonna have a placeholder that holds something, and I'll just put search for now and the 3 dots for people to know that's we are going to search or something. Let me just take this a little bit, resize it in here so we can better see the code, and resize that, and so everyone can clearly see what is going on behind the scenes in here. So we're gonna add a div in here, and this div is gonna represent the actual icon that you have seen in the demo. So this is the icon what you see firstly on the button. So you click the icon and the actual input bar expands. So this is what we want, and of course we're gonna keep this icon on the right side on the search bar. Once it's expanded and once the user is actually typing, we're gonna keep this icon, so it's gonna have like an absolute position or something. So I'm gonna add a div in here. I'm gonna give it a class of icons container, so it's gonna be like the main container of the icons, and I'm missing a T in here, so yeah, it's container. I'm gonna need also a div ID, and there's gonna be, let's say, the search icon, so it's gonna be like representing the actual search icon, and close the div. And there we go. So that's basically it. Inside of this, I'm not gonna have anything because it's gonna leave it empty. I'm gonna use the power of CSS to create the actual icon. So I'm not gonna use a Font Awesome or any other CDN or other library, as I've told you before. I'm gonna create a library-free JavaScript projects in here, or an expandable search bar. So we're not going to use any third-party library or a website that allows us to do so. So I'm going to create it from scratch, and I'm going to show you what is actually how it looks like and what each part does. So yeah, I'm just going to keep it empty in here. I'm going to do this in a CSS in a second. And yeah, that's pretty much basically it. This is what we need for the structure. You need like a search title. That's what the title comes up from the top, and we've got the field sets. What do you mean by the field set in here? It's just like a grouping elements. You take it as a form. It groups multiple inputs together and buttons and labels and stuff like this. So this is what basically a field set does. It's an HTML5 tag, specific tag for HTML5. So this is what basically it does. And here the icons container, so it's going to have a container, and they're going to have the search icon inside of this, and obviously you've got our inputs in here. So let's just jump now into the style.css and start working with this kind of things. So I've got the body in here, and obviously if you take a look in here, the index.html, I've got the up, the body inside of it is the up, and the body is actually inside the HTML tag. So we need to go ahead and permit them or give them a full width and a full height in here. So I'm gonna do HTML. Okay, if I'm word typing right, so I'm gonna do HTML. The font family is then gonna be still there. I'm gonna put width of let's see, 100%, I think, and the height is gonna be 100% either. So that's not gonna be a problem or anything. Yeah, that's pretty much gonna be it. I'm gonna also add a generic tag for all the same elements, and I'm gonna add box sizing, which is gonna be a border box. So the box sizing of any element is gonna have a border box, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna add also the application, and the application, and the actual application is basically an ID. So it has an ID, and also I'm gonna add a width of 100%. And height is, of course, is going to be 100%. So it takes the full width and the full height. We're not going to do anything with this element in particular. I'm going to have a display of flex, so I need to go ahead and use the flex box to actually, make the actual search box in a centered way, like horizontally and vertically. So this is what probably I'm going to use it in here, just for centering it. That's why I'm using the flex box. I'm going to do justify content, and it's going to be center, and align items, and it's going to be center. Okay, that's pretty great. And also I'm gonna need to change the flex direction because we're gonna have two different things. I'm gonna just make it column. It is row by default, and I'm changing it column in here. Yeah, that's pretty much basically it. So this is all you've got to probably need for this case. And I've got some colors in here, so you might probably need to play around so you can change these things. I created them in the variables. I'm going to copy paste them in here. So are actually generic colors. From where I got these colors, if you might ask, I'm using a website I really love, which is the Flat UI Colors. It's a pretty awesome website that gives you a flat colors that can just go ahead and grab from the color palettes, and you can probably see in here. So you can click one in here, just click one, it's gonna copy you. You can choose whatever settings in here, and it's pretty great. I know there's a plethora of like color gradient website that you probably might prefer than that, but this is what I use. So the flat colors or flatUIcolors.com. So you might probably want to check this out. And as I've told you, there's like a shiny blue, shiny green, and nice green and nice blue. Just the colors we're going to use throughout the whole application, so it's better to put them inside of variables instead of just copy pasting the RGB value every single time you want to use this. So it's way much better. That's why using a preprocessor like SAS or less for instead of CSS is way much better. It's actually very important, especially nowadays. We are not 2019 and like new technologies coming up very hot and so on and so forth. So it's a very important thing to be taken care of. Now let's just jump into the search contents. What I mean by the search contents is going to be like the main area in here, exactly inside the application. So I'm going to name this, it's actually a class. So I'm going to do search contents, and it's going to be it inside of that. So I'm going to have display flex. So this is going to have a flex display. So we're going to use flexbox in here. Also, I need to change the direction to make it a column. And okay, the justify content I need to center because it's gonna probably just be the search container in there, and we're gonna need to center things inside of it. The things that we have got in here are both the search title and the field set, so that's why I'm changing the columns and the justify content. You can probably just get rid of that because since we put it in here, it's not really that much of necessary to put it up there. But if you want to add something to your web page or something, that's going to be ready for you up there, so you can just go in and keep it up without any problems. And okay, let's also need align items, and the align items is going to be as well in this center. And also don't forget about position relative, because we're going to have some absolute positioning inside of this particular container. Like a child has an absolute position, so it's way much important to put the relative position inside of the parent or in the property of the parent instead of the child. So I'm gonna put search title, so it's actually gonna concern the actual title. I'm gonna put a color for this title. So let's see, we're gonna name this color a shiny I don't know, let's choose the shiny green, which is a pretty great color in here if you could take a look. So I'm using this particular one. The reason I'm not using here the hexadecimal value, instead I'm using this RGB function, because the hexadecimal somehow it doesn't actually support the alpha version or the alpha value in here. So when you change it below the one, it's gonna be like breaking up or something like this. So it's way much better to add it in here. It's very important to use RGB instead of hexadecimals if you're concerning to use alpha things inside of your application. This is a really important step. And let me just go and change in here the font weight. So the font weight, let's try to put it 400 to make it look nice and elegant. And the position is going to be absolute, as I've told you, because to apply the actual animation we need an absolute positioning. So yeah, this is actually a very important step to be done inside of that. And okay, let's for the absolute positioning, I'm going to add some positioning in here. Or let's just go ahead and try okay, let me just try to put some positionings inside of that. So I'm just gonna put 7 EM. That's actually just a startup, because later on when we animate that, we are probably just gonna go in and play with the animation a little bit. So I'm gonna put width of 15 EM, and opacity for first is gonna be 0, so it's not gonna be available, or you're not gonna be able to see it. I'm gonna add a transition, which is gonna be transitioning everything on a 0 points, let's say, okay, 62 seconds, and it's gonna have an easing out transition function, and I'm gonna create a class inside of this. So what I mean by this, I'm gonna just go and do end, and this is actually a CSS pseudo elements that you can probably tell. So whenever we add a class inside or alongside the search title class, we're gonna just override this. So whenever we toggle the show class, we're gonna do this part in the actual JavaScript, because it's impossible to do it in the CSS, to toggle classes, remove classes, and so on and so forth. So we've got to use JavaScript just only for this particular part, and a couple of other things, just very simple, not that much of complicated or anything. So most part of this application is going to be done using the actual pure CSS and Sass, to be a little bit more concise about it. Sass, not CSS, because if you try to use Sass instead of, or pretty much pure CSS instead of Sass, because it's going to make it way much harder for you. You'll not be able to do it, as the best thing, because this provides you with everything that you need. Plus, you're going to find a lot of issues, a lot of missing functions and missing functionalities that are not going to help you actually throughout your way to make this happen. So it's way much better to use it Sass instead of pure CSS. Let's try now to put the actual field set, and the field set, remember, it's actually a child of the actual search content. So I'm putting it inside of it, as you can clearly see in here. The field set is actually inside the search content, and yeah, I'm gonna add some outline to it, since by default it has some, I don't know, rubbish outline. So I'm just gonna get rid of the outline. I'm gonna have a border, so it's gonna be 0, and a position of relative. So afterwards, let me just go ahead and try save that, and to make things refreshing and everything. So save every single thing. Somehow it's not properly refreshing. There we go. Now it is refreshing actually, and it's actually telling us to import. And yeah, I changed the actual extension of this file, so it's SCSS instead of Sass, so, or instead of CSS. And there we go. Look what I've got right now. We've got the search box in here, just centered as we've expected it to be, as we put in the style in here. Everything is centered correctly without any problems or anything. And the search bar is not looking that great, so this is what I'm gonna work right now and try to add some style to this search bar, because sometimes it's a really important thing to go ahead and do though. And let's just go and jump right into this. And for this search bar, it's gonna just be a normal child of the search content. We're not gonna go ahead and put it inside of the field set, though you can, but we're not gonna go ahead and do it, just to make it simple. And remember that the search bar has actually a search bar icon, and for this I'm gonna add the height. Okay, let's try a height of 2.4, or let's try a little bit much better one, 2.8 am. I'm gonna do a width of as well 2.8. so we start, why I'm putting 2.8 in here, because I want it to start like, in a small size, like small width, and once we click the actual icon, it gets the expanding effect. So this is how we can actually apply the expanding effect. We set initial value, so the initial value is going to be like the initial width value in here. I just set a small initial width value. Then whenever you try to apply that, and when we're going to apply it is actually on the focus event. So once the user actually focus on the input, what's going to happen is basically just like the input is going to expand, and it's going to fit whatever width we're going to specify in that particular thing. Now let's try to add a padding, and for the padding I'm just going to put 8 pixels, and for the font size, I'll try the font size, a decent font size. It's going to font size be applied on the actual fonts we type inside of the inputs, not the placeholder or anything. We will come up to the placeholder in a second, so we're going to add that. I need also a border to 0, and let me just put a border radius to, okay, I can't quite type border radius. Let's try 4 pixels, and the color is going to be, I don't know, let me just grab a color from here. It's just like a dark gray color or something I've got saved. So yeah, it's a dark gray color. If you just take a look on it, that's what it looks like. You can probably just figure out a little bit much better color than that, but this is what I could found. And I'm gonna add the box shadow. What I mean by the box shadow is what actually you see like behind the actual inputs, this shadow thing. So I'm gonna add in here, I'm gonna add a 0 pixel on the X, 3 pixels on the Y, so we can have an offset down, and 19 pixels on the blur, and 3 pixels spread. And I'm gonna add a normal RGBA thing, which is gonna be just a normal dark gray, 15, 15, 15, and I'm gonna add an opacity of 0.2. So it's not really that much of bizarre or anything. It looks pretty decent and pretty good. And finally, I'm gonna add a transition. So this transition property gonna play the role of making the transition or the actual animation happen, the animation of the expanding bar. So I'm gonna add all, and I'm gonna add let's say 0.7 seconds. That's gonna do the job perfectly for us. So without any problems, this is what we want. Now we need to make it expandable, like we need to increase the width once the user like types in this one, or like once the actual user actually focus inside on this particular search bar. So we want to expand this. I don't know, I'm not seeing the actual preview correctly, but there we go. This is what you've got actually. So whenever you click that, you've got this one. This outline isn't quite what we won't need yet, but we're gonna figure out how to get the outline. Let me just get rid of this parentheses. I don't know, preview instead of preview. It's really annoying, so I just like to make it a little bit better. And here I'm gonna add the focus events. So whenever the actual user focuses inside of this search input bar, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna first get rid of the outline, the actual really ridiculous blue outline. I'm gonna add a width, and here this is the main part. So on the focus, we're gonna apply the transition up here, and we are actually gonna go ahead and change the width. So here you specify which width is gonna expand to, and the width we probably wanna expand to is just like, let's say 20 EM, which is pretty decent, not really that much of ridiculous or anything, pretty good. And I'm gonna add some borders. Once it expands, we're gonna just add some borders. I'm gonna add solid. In this case, I'm gonna use the nice green. So the nice green variable color that we have specified up there. And I'm gonna add also a box shadow. So for the box shadow, I'm gonna add 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 10 pixels for the actual, sorry for this. So 10 pixels for the actual spread, and 0.3 or the blur, and 0.3 for the spread. I don't really want that much of box shadow coming up, and I'm gonna add the nice green as a box shadow for the color. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's pretty basic, nothing really much complicated or anything like that. So it works pretty great right now. So if we take a look in here, we just click on this, I clearly see we get this really awesome expandable search bar with an awesome behind the scenes shadow in here, like in the green and stuff, and we blur it and it becomes invisible in here again. So it resizes to the default width, which is 2.8 or something like that, as we have specified. And once we click it, it gets expanded again, and so on and so forth. So this is what you probably need to imagine about this. We still need to add a couple of other things to make it look way much better with the text animation and stuff. So let's just go ahead and try to do this right now. One thing you might probably have noticed is the actual search bar placeholder in here doesn't look that much of stunning and good. So we need to use the Webkit placeholder. What I mean by the Webkit, it's actually only available for Chrome and probably available for Mozilla, but not for all the browsers. So if you want to like put this on the browsers, it's gonna be very tricky and very hard for you. So let's just try to add it for now. It's not really that much of important to be added because it doesn't make that much of sense, but we can go ahead and use it anyway. So I'm gonna do Webkit, and I'm gonna add the inputs placeholder. For the placeholder in here, I'm gonna make an opacity of 0. So it starts on opacity of 0. So we don't see any placeholder in here because in a second we're gonna add the actual search icon in here, and we don't want the search icon to appear above the actual text of the placeholder. So we hide it, we put the opacity of 0, and once we focus on that, once the actual search bar is gonna be expanded, we are pretty much gonna go ahead and show this placeholder text. So yeah. Let's try to add a font size in here, as I've told you, because the placeholder and the actual text contents or the text area of the input is completely different from each other, so separate from each other. So you need to set each one separately. I'm gonna add a color, and it's gonna be a color for that. So I'm gonna try. Okay, I've got a color from there, and a width. So the first width is gonna be. Let's just get rid of this. I don't really need it anyway. I think that sounds pretty decent. Now on the focus, what we need is to access the actual placeholder and turn the opacity to 1. So we need to turn it up, like increase the opacity in order to show the actual placeholder text after focusing. So we're gonna need to do this really quick. I am gonna probably just do WebKits. Okay, so and it's going to be inputs placeholder, and I'm going to put the opacity to 1. So we just need to turn it 1. Sorry, it's my bad for the 3 columns. Now it's actually invisible. Once we click that, there we go, it comes to life, and once we blur this out, it goes away, and so on and so forth. So this is what we probably want as an effect, so it doesn't really look ugly or anything awkward or something like this. It looks pretty great right now. So yeah, that's pretty stunning. Now let's just go and try to work for the actual icons container. So instead of, I'm going to create this class, going to be the icon container. So it's going to hold the main icon container that's holding pretty much the whole icons and stuff. Since the icon is pretty much, we're going to display it, this is actually the input bar elements. And on CSS, you can actually put elements inside of other elements, and only if you actually put the position to absolute. So with relative position, it's absolutely impossible to do so. We need to change the position to the actual of the search icon or the search container or the icons container pretty much to be absolute in order to be able to put it above or like overflow the actual search icon thing or the search bar in here in order to appear as we want it to be. So let me show you that how in a second. I'm gonna first put the position to absolute. So this is what we probably want. We're going to put the top to 11 pixels, and the right as well is going to be 21 pixels, and let's try 32 pixels for the, I don't know, for the actual width. So let's do 32 pixels width and 32 pixels height as well. So that sounds pretty great. Or let's turn this 1 pixel down. I don't know, to make it just a little bit good. And let me just make the cursor look like a pointer, so like we can click the actual icon or anything. That sounds pretty decent. Now we need to actually edit the actual search icon itself, the actual container of the icon. So it's gonna be the search icon, and inside of it, we're gonna have a couple of things. So we need to show you that this is what we're gonna edit. And as I've told you, I'm gonna use some CSS using the borders and stuff like this, the after pseudo elements, and so on and so forth. That allows us actually to create the actual search icon in here instead of using third-party library or any icon provider or something like this. You can probably go ahead and use this without any problems. I'm not telling you it's not good or something, but I just want to make this completely native without any dependencies or anything, you know, using it instead of native. So I'm gonna do that really quick in here, but the code is quite ridiculously long. Let me just go and copy this from here so you can probably see what I'm going to do. You know, instead of putting it all in here, just trying to type in it, because it's just kind of a standard. Once you copy it on yours, it's going to work perfectly without any problems. Let me see the error. There we go. Yeah, I've got a multiple things are going on, but basically what it does in here, we're going to have a position relative to the actual absolute position here. Since it's going to be absolute, so we can position this container whenever we want, and the elements are going to be positioned relatively to this particular container, the parent container that we are talking in here. And we've got a top in here, so we can specify the top because it's the only child inside of that. I'm going to give it like a top to 5 pixels, just some basic positioning. I'm going to give it a width of 60% in the height. Set the full opacity of it, and here's the actual trick. So we put the actual border radius to 50%, and this is what pretty much you see is the actual circle of the search icon. So remember, a search icon, what it does have is basically a circle you see, and it does also have some kind of like a line coming up through this circle. So probably what a search icon looks like. So this is the first part, is actually about to create the actual circle, and the after pseudo element, what it does, it adds in content, it makes it absolute, and it adds the actual line that comes down from the actual circle of the search icon pretty much. Here what we're doing in here, let's add in a border. 3 pixels solid, and making the border radius in here just like, you know, making it look a circle. So basically what it is. And we add some box shadows and a transition in, so to make it look much more like you know, a search icon or search circle of an icon. And here it's pretty much the same. We add the contents to be empty, and then we use the border radius again, and basically we're gonna use the box shadow as we did it up there, and that's pretty much it. So we only do a transform of 95 degrees to take this line actually and you know, rotate it like upwards. It was like, you know, vertically aligned. We're gonna just take it minus 35 degrees upward to make it look like, you know, a perpendicular or something like this. You got the point pretty much how a search icon looks like, but this is what basically it is. Nothing that much of complicated or anything. And I don't know if it is actually gonna work or something, but I'm gonna have a search icon. Let me just see. I think there's actually something missing in my code. And we actually just forgot about, you know, we misspelled the container. We just typed something really awkward. So make sure to type it like container. And there we go. It works pretty much as we expect it to be. Let me just refresh that quick. Now we've got the icon actually in here. But once we click it, nothing happens. Of course, we need to add some JavaScript. If you try to focus that, just try to find the cursor in here. It does work, and the icon stays on the right position without moving anything, and the animation works pretty much stunning without any problems, and it looks pretty great. You know, everything's pretty much working right now. Let's try now to just jump into the actual index.js and try to add some couple of things in here. What we want is once we click the actual search icon, that we get the focus. So we need to trigger the focus event once we click on the actual search icon. So we need to reference some elements first. Let's start by putting a constant here, like do search icon. So it's going to be the main search icon. So I'm going to use the documents, and sorry about this. So I'm going to use the document to get elements by ID. I'm going to use the ID. Remember, the search icon is actually identified by an ID. So I'm going to put the search icon. Also, we need a couple of more things. We need the search bar. And it's going to be documents, get elements by ID again. And we're going to get the search bar. And both the search icon and the search bar are both identified using an ID. And lastly, we're going to need to get the search title. So I'm going to talk about the search title. Let me just refresh it and talk about it in a second. So it's going to be search title, and I'm going to add a documents.get class name, because the search title is actually identified using a class name instead of an ID. That's what we're going to use this. So search and title, and this function really returns a collection, like it returns an array of all the available elements that has the same class name that you have specified in here. So what we probably can do is just like, you know, access the first elements, since we are pretty much sure that there's one single element has this class name. And but the reason I'm using a class name, for some of you might ask why you're actually using a class name instead of an ID. You can easily change it to an ID and there's no problems. No, we can't, because to apply the animation we need the class names to work with the class names and stuff like this. You might want to just go ahead and do it using IDs, but it's much easier to use class names and stuff. So now let's try to add the on click. So we need to make sure that once we click this search icon in here, so we need to add like this search icon on click. So this event is going to be running a function, and once we click that, what we're gonna probably do is just like tell the search bar to focus. So we need to do search bar dot focus. Simple, nothing that much of complicated or anything. And also we need to check for the blur. So on the search bar dot on blur, so on there is actually a blur or something. We can actually just get rid of the actual content. So let me just show you that in a second what I mean by this. So create a function that runs. Now if we try to make this work, like we click that, there we go, we got the actual animation as we want it to be and everything. There's actually no problems whatsoever, but there's actually some problem. Once we click that and try to submit it, it's just gonna go ahead and stay here. So what I want is actually I can submit things into this search bar. So let me just show you this. So we're gonna do search bar dot key down. So we're gonna add the key down in here. It's gonna be a function. It takes an event, and in this event I'm gonna do fe.key. So it's gonna have a key inside of it equals enter. So what I mean, we type something inside of the search bar, then we press enter, so we can actually do the search thing. It's completely actually optional, and I don't know, just doing it for you guys to see what you can do pretty much with the search bar and how to use it. But if you know all of the different things, just skip it up and go to the animation part. I'm gonna do this dot value, so display whatever that this, what I mean by this object is actually referencing the actual search bar. So like doing search bar dot value, you can do this dot value because you use the function context, and it has pretty much the same thing in here. And you need to use 3 equals because of JavaScript and how it works. And this is not alter, so it's a large. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So once we click that, we try to put something in here, we press enter, there we go, we've got an alert, and we get searching for whatever we typed in here. We press OK, and as you can see, we've still got the actual thing. So what we want is on blur, just to set this dot value to 0, so we don't really see anything awkward or anything. Now it works pretty much fine. You click that, you get the on blur, you get everything, and the animation looks as much as stunning as possible. Let's go and try to add the search title. So for the search title, we're gonna probably do, remember on the style.css, we've added some other class which called the show class in here. And what does this class do is just like makes the top a little bit decrease the top like minus 3.4 AM instead of like 7 AM. It makes it 3.4, so the title is gonna be up here and it's gonna bring it down till here, and the opacity is gonna become 1 instead of 0. And now it's completely transparent, and it doesn't show up anymore. We can't see it. And once we actually focus on this, we're gonna grab it down, and we are gonna go and change the actual opacity to 1 in order to make it available, or we can easily actually see the actual title. Now we can go ahead and do this really quick. Remember the index.html, we've got the search title class like holding up on this particular text or this title container in here. So yeah, this is what I'm gonna probably use. So instead of the focus, what we need is, once we focus in here, we are going to add the show class into it. The show class that we have added in here, we are going to add it into the class list of this particular item. So we're going to do pretty much using JavaScript the same thing as doing like this. We're going to just grab it and add the show class into it, like toggle the show class on the class list of the search title div. And I'm going to do the search title, so accessing the search title, and I'm gonna do add attributes. So I don't know, or pretty much set attributes. I don't know what's gonna pretty much happen with me. So I'm gonna set an attribute. I'm gonna set the class attribute in here, and I'm gonna grab the search title dot class name, the current class name. I'm gonna do plus show. So whatever class name it does have in this particular situation, for example, it has like a lot of class names inside of it. We're just gonna grab it and we're gonna concatenate it with the show class name, and we're just gonna set it as the new class name for the search title elements. That's pretty much it. So it's very basic, not really that much of complicated. And on the blur in here, what we need is, once we blur it, we need to like toggle off the animations. Like we need to hide the actual title. So to do so, we need to remove the show class from the actual search title element. And it's pretty basic as we did in there. So I'm gonna do a search title, set attribute, the same thing. I'm gonna go to the class attribute in here. I'm gonna do search title, and access the actual class name. You can access the class list, which returns an array, but this one returns a string of holding pretty much all the class names inside of the search title div elements. And we're gonna use the replace instead of a string. So since it is actually a string, what we're gonna probably replace is find the show, and we're just gonna go ahead and replace it. And instead of that, we're just gonna find like separate or a space, then a show, because every single class name inside of any HTML element is separated using spaces. So we need to figure out and remove the spaces, because it's gonna make it a little bit ugly and can cause bugs and stuff like this. So it's way much better to do so. We're gonna probably replace it just with an empty string, which means we're just gonna completely remove it and get rid of it. And this is gonna replace, like, we're gonna return a new string that has the replaced value, which means we're gonna return a class names from, like, the show class name is gonna be removed from the class names list. Pretty simple. Let me just add a semicolon at the end in here. I don't want to cause any issues or errors, and this should pretty much work pretty much fine. Let's just go and try to refresh that really quick. Once we click that, we kind of get in it, but not quite as we want it to be. For some reason, let me just go and check out this, and just actually make sure to spell out the is in outs correctly, because I just put a mistake inside of that. And the other thing, make sure to take the width up a little bit, because the text has been changed, and you know, it's a little bit longer right now, so you need to make it fit. So the width now is 21, and it looks pretty stunning. If you try to click that, let me get rid of this. If you try to click that, I don't know, something is wrong with this. As clear you see, you click that, it comes down, and on a blur it goes up, and so on and so forth. It's pretty stunning and pretty awesome animation. With all different things in here, you can type in this, you can click enter, and you get that, and so on and so forth. So it works pretty much fine, and hopefully you like actually pretty much this animation. If you guys actually like this kind of type of tutorials or anything like that, I'll be very happy to make more for you guys, like CSS pure things, creating some awesome animation things like this with CSS and stuff, or any pretty much thing you actually like. If you like also React tutorials, let me know for that. I'm planning for new React tutorials actually. So thank you guys for watching. As I've said again, hopefully you've enjoyed this. You're gonna find this code sandbox in the description. The link will be there, so you can easily access it. As well, you might also want to check out the iPnews.com for all the tutorials, all the written tutorial for this particular video tutorial if you really want to take a reference or anything. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.